The Right Book by Cory Doctorow. Originally published in The Bookseller, June 2008. Read by Neil Gaiman at Worldcon 2009 in Montreal, Canada. Now, ish. The thing that Arthur liked best about owning his own shop was that he could stock whatever he pleased, and if you didn't like it, you could just shop somewhere else. So there in the window were 4 ancient Cluedo sets rescued from a car boot sale in Sussex, a pair of trousers sewn from a salvaged World War II bivouac tent, a small card advertising the availability of artisanal truffles handmade by an autistically gifted chocolatier in Islington, a brick of pu'er tea that had been made in Guyana by a Chinese family who'd emigrated a full century previous, and, just as of now, 6 small, handsomely made books. The books were a first for Arthur. He'd always loved reading the things, but he'd worked at bookshops before opening his own little place in Bow, and he knew the book trade well enough to stay well away. They were bulky, these books, and low margin. Low margin, 2 for 3 titles actually lost money. And honestly, practically no one read books anymore, and what they did read was mostly rubbish. Selling books depressed Arthur. These little buggers were different, though. He reached into the window. The shop was so small he could reach it without leaving his stool behind the till, and plucked one out and handed it to the kid who just asked for it. She was about 15, with awkward hair and skin and posture and so on, but the gleam in her eye that said, "Where have you been all my life?" as he handed her the book. "They're all carrying them in school," she said. "Never thought I'd find one in a shop, though." "How much?" Arthur compared the book to his cheat sheet behind the counter. This one had a cover made from old Hacks tins, resurfaced with a spectral spiderweb of rotting Irish lace. The chapters within had a whopping aggregate score of 98%, meaning that 98% of the writing community had rated them aces or above. Even before he looked at the price column on his sheet, he knew he was going to have to disappoint her. "Oh, that one's 70 quid, love," he said. He armoured himself for the inevitable shock, disbelief, and protestation. But she just hung her head, resigned. "Figures," she said. He ran his fingers down the spines until he found a cheaper one, bound with floppy felt screened with a remixed Victorian woodcut of a woman with tentacles for arms. "This one's got mostly the same text, but I can let you have it for..." He looked at the sheet again, thinking about the wholesale price, about his margin. "Call it £25. She shook her head again, gave him a wry smile. "Still too much. I should have known. It's mostly the posh kids who've got them, the kind who turn up at school with a tenner just for lunch money." "You could just read it online, you know." "Oh, I do," she said. "Been following it since it started." Her eyes flicked down. "Wrote a little, too. Didn't make it into the top 100, though." The story so far was part game, part competition, part creative writing exercise, a massive shared universe drama with dozens of subplots, mysteries, betrayals, crosses and double crosses. Everyone kept saying it was only a matter of time until the big publishers started to cherry-pick the best writers from the message boards. But in the meantime, there were these little handmade editions, each one paying a small honor system royalty to the authors they anthologized. "Have you tried asking your teachers for help?" He knew as soon as he asked it that it was the wrong sort of question. She rolled her eyes with adolescent eloquence, then looked down again. "Only you might be able to get credit for it. Independent study type of thing." She rolled her eyes again. "Right," he said. "Right, well, sorry I couldn't be more help." The little bell over the door jingled merrily as she left. Back again. She had her school bag in her hands, zip opened, bag gaping. He was reminded of all those terrible little signs that said, no more than 2 school kids in the shop at any one time. Fancy that. Imagine if it said, no more than 2 women in the shop, or no more than 2 Asians in the shop. Kids were the last group you could treat like second-class citizens without being called a bigot. Where do you get your copies of the book? She said. The book, with the capital letters. The one book with 1,000 covers, 1,000,000 tables of contents, each one not so much published as made, as curated. There's a man, he said, art student at UCL. He's got a little stall at the weekend in the parking structure where Borough Market used to be. So you just buy them from some bloke. Does he make them? I suppose so. He gives me that impression anyway. He liked her shrewd, unembarrassed, direct questioning. Not a single scruple or a hint that she was embarrassed to be interrogating him about the intimate details of his trade. Do you have, like, an exclusive arrangement with him? No, nothing like that. Her hands were digging through the bag, looking for something. Would you think about carrying these? She clearly bound them herself. Someone had taught her to really sew, her gran, maybe. You could see it in the neat stitching that ran the binding and the spine, holding together the nylon and the denim taken from a pair of jeans, a backpack. The end papers were yellowed page 3 girls from the Star, strategically cropped just below the nipples. He'd been reading the story so far ever since those first 6 copies had sold out in 48 hours, and he had an eye for the table of contents now, and he flicked to each volume's list, giving them a long look. Who's Chloe Autumn? She didn't look down, looked at him with a look that was totally unapologetic. I am, she said. It's one way to get my stuff into print, isn't it? She grinned. It was a very grown-up grin. What do you think you want for them? Those 4, I figure, you can have cheaply, say £15 each. You can sell them for 30 then. That's fair, I think. It was more than fair. His UCL student wasn't carrying anything for less than 40 now, and was only offering him a 40% discount. What about returns? What's a return? He reached under the counter and brought out the shooting stick he used as a spare stool. Have a seat, he said. Let me explain some things. Want a cup of tea? It's pu'er, Chinese, mostly.